Okay, I'm back. Did you guys miss me? I definitely missed you. So the reason that I haven't been uploading videos is because I've actually been away from my house for about a week. I was house sitting and living in someone else's house, so I didn't have access to my computer. I'm gonna try to get him back started up again. Hopefully we can get that to work. So for today, finally, after I don't know how long it took them, FFG put the images for Beneath the Red Keep up on Card Game DB, so now I can finally review this new pack, even though, again, I think it's been out for over a week at this point. Regardless, let's just get right into it and look at some of these new cards. Let's just start off with the agenda, because, I mean, this is the biggest card in the pack, right? Kingdom of Shadows. You may include non-loyal characters with the Shadow keyword from any faction in your deck. Increase the cost of each character you marshal by 1. Reduce the cost of the first character you bring out of Shadows each round by 2. I do not like this agenda because what it basically forces you to do is to have almost no characters in your deck without Shadow, and to just spend the first 2 turns of the game only marshaling cards into Shadows, and then spam resets and play trade routes, which was already being done with decks like Tyrell, Banner of the Lion, and this is just like an agenda that's even more tailor-made for doing that, which is a very non-interactive way of playing, in my opinion, very boring. It's like you're just sitting there looking at an empty board for a few turns and just waiting for something to happen. So not a big fan. It's not that I'm not a fan of the Shadows mechanic in general. It seems totally fine, but I think this particular agenda, I mean, I'm not sure how I would have designed it myself, but I definitely would not have made this drawback, which says increase the cost of each character you marshal by 1. It super discourages you from ever trying to marshal anything normally, as opposed to just spamming cards into Shadows. And once you've spent, the first turn or two only marshaling cards into Shadows, and you're sitting there with 7 cards in Shadows and no characters on the board, you're like, well, I guess I might as well start playing resets now. So that's pretty lame. The only characters that might still be sort of playable with the agenda are just the very biggest characters, because their cost is going up by the least amount in terms of proportion. Like going from 6 to 7 is what a 1 in 6, I don't know what the exact percentage on 1/6 is, about 16% increase in cost, compared to if you go down to a 1 cost character, it's a 100% increase in cost. It makes them way less efficient. So if you think about the 6 cost Euron Crow's Eye, he's still worth playing for 7 gold because he's just such a broken card. So really expensive high impact cards like that might still be worth playing with the agenda. I could see making a deck where you still have Great Halls and you only have a few really big guys with 3 copies each as the only characters in the deck that don't have the Shadow keyword. It's still a little questionable because the Great Halls are not nearly as good when you are probably not ever going to use them to reduce anything besides those specific large characters. So maybe you could go with King's Roads? I don't know. We'll see. I'll be playing some games with this agenda and seeing what happens. Enough about that. We've got Advisor to the Crown. I like seeing more support for Maesters. Action, kneel Advisor to the Crown to reduce the cost of the next Maester character you marshal by 1. And it's just a 1 cost dude with a 1 strength intrigue icon. He's a Maester, so sort of a card for Conclave, I guess. Yeah, perfectly fine card to go in a Conclave deck, I guess. Seems good. Good for that deck, rather. I like seeing the weird agendas get support like that. And they've definitely been doing some of that this cycle, putting out new 7 cards and stuff like that. Here's one here, Alice Graceford, although this one's not any good. But still, I like the idea. Alice Graceford, Lady the 7, 3 only intrigue, and action, kneel Alice Graceford to choose another 7 character until the end of the phase. That character gains renown. I think it's just bad. The fact it costs 3 and it has to kneel for the effect. And it's only 1 icon. So yeah. I don't know, if it was cheaper or if it didn't have to kneel, it would be playable. But I think the way this card is here, it's just not worth it. Blackbird, Night's Watch Loyal Warship with cost 1 and Shadow 1. Reaction, after Blackbird comes out of Shadows, choose and stand another Night's Watch location. So this is definitely a one of in any Night's Watch deck that has the wall. So most Night's Watch decks will have this as a one of, I imagine. Sort of like Night Flyer and Greyjoy, just goes in very easily. Castle Guard, Baratheon Shadow character, cost 4, Shadow 3, non-loyal, so this guy will be going into Kingdom of Shadows decks. Reaction: after Castle Guard comes out of Shadows, choose another character that came out of Shadows this phase. Return that character to Shadows. So, very, like, obvious use and utility with cards that do something when they come out of Shadows, which there's a lot of cards that do. You just bring this guy out and put him back in, and you can sort of double dip. Use him on Sir Mandan Moore and cards like that. So I imagine he'll be in a lot of Kingdom decks. And like a Baratheon Shadows deck, like Baratheon Assault from the Shadows or something, maybe he would go in there. Though I'm not as sure about that one. Yeah, because that's going to get a bit expensive in that case. And you don't have, I don't know. I would have to play with the deck to see. One interesting thing about him, though, is it's just choose another character that came out of Shadows. It doesn't have to be your character. So he can also be like anti-Shadows tech. Although, again, a lot of the times, characters that come out of Shadows, you don't want to put them in and let the opponent use the ability again. So, like, you don't want to put Mirror Read back into Shadows for the Stark player. So, in a lot of cases, that's not actually going to be that good, unfortunately. City of Spiders, a new city plot, 4/7/1, 5 reserve. When revealed, initiate the when revealed ability on a city plot card in your use pile as if you just revealed it. I don't know. You could reuse At the Gates, but doing At the Gates, again, is not that good because the limited only goes into your hand instead of going into play, so that's not really worth it. So I am honestly not sure how much use this will be. Maybe I should go look at what all the city plots are out there now, but like, would you really play this to reuse, let's say, a City Besieged? I mean, I'd just rather play 2 copies of a City Besieged at that point. So I don't really think this will be that good at the moment, but could potentially become good with whatever additional city plots are coming out this cycle. Doubting Septa, 2 cost, 1 strength, the 7 intrigue dude for Lannister. After you win an intrigue challenge, sacrifice Doubting Septa to choose a character location you control. That card gains 1 power. It's a card for Lannister Faith Militant decks, and that's like the only deck you put it in, but it's okay in that deck. 2 cost 7 character. The sacrifice could potentially be relevant. It has some Flea Bottom synergy. I guess you could put it in a Flea Bottom deck there and get some like recursion out of it. That could definitely be a thing. If you don't go with like a Shadows deck for Lannister, if you make a Lannister Flea Bottom deck, then you could have, this thing, the Hound, and I don't know, I guess this thing and the Hound would be the Flea Bottom characters. I feel like there was another one I'm forgetting, but that's the point there. One nice thing about it is you can use it to put a power on the Starry Sept, so you won't have to actually win a power challenge. You can just sack this, put a power on there, and then you have a Starry Sept trigger available. Dragon Skull, 3 cost Targaryen attachment. Targaryen character only, Shadow 2. While there are no dragon characters in play, attached character gains Intimidated Renown. So, if you ever play a Targaryen deck that isn't a burn deck, I'm not sure if that's even physically possible at this point, then this is a card for that deck. It's like, I don't know, if you play like Targaryen Kingdom of Shadows or something, and you're not doing a burn deck, you're just like actually doing Shadows cards, then this thing could probably go in there. Maybe, and I guess like Cohor, you could put it in Cohor. But just the requirement to not have any dragons, though, is, I don't know. Because you're still going to be using dragons in a Cohor deck, probably. That's really kind of a killer. But who knows? There might be a weird deck that has a place for it. And the Targaryen character only also limits it, because it could potentially go into banner decks, but it's Targaryen character only, so it's not going to be that good to do like some other faction Banner of the Dragon and put this on your Queensguard character. You won't really be able to do that. Which is good. I don't want this to be able to stack onto a Queensguard character. Forest Patrol, 4 cost, Shadow 4, Ally Ranger, Night's Watch dude. He's got the military and 6 strength. This is the Night's Watch Shadow character that does something to put it into play for free. Kneel a Night's Watch location to put Forest Patrol into play from Shadows. So definitely a very doable condition there. Just, kneel some random location that either doesn't normally kneel or doesn't necessarily need to kneel every turn, like you can afford to kneel it. You can think of like Eastwatch by the Sea or the Haunted Forest or things like that. The problem is his icons are bad. Military icon only is bad. So I think that's going to limit him to like Ranger decks. So maybe in Rangers or like Shadow decks he could be put into just because he's a Shadow dude. But for normal Night's Watch decks, I don't think he quite makes the cut. Now, if he had like a power icon or something, then he'd be a lot more playable. We've got Gorold Goodbrother. It says something about Greyjoy that this character does not make the cut in a Greyjoy deck. Like any other faction, this would be a really good high-cost renowned dude to use. But he's still worse than all of the other big Greyjoy cards. So, Pillage, Renown, Reaction, after location enters an opponent's discard pile, stand Gorold Goodbrother, limit twice per phase. And he's 6 cost, 5 strength, and these 2 icons. And he's a Lord. So he's a card for a Pillage deck, I guess. Obviously, he has some synergy there. Otherwise, he's just sort of like, yeah, he doesn't really do it. But in a Pillage deck, he could potentially be like a Randall Tarley. Because if you pillage, 5 cards over the challenges phase or something like that, it's fairly likely that you'll get at least 1 stand out of him. And then you can add in, whatever, bring out Night Flyer in the middle of the challenges phase and discard something and use that to stand him. That could be kind of dank. We went over Kingdom of Shadows. We've got Knights of the Mind. This is another Maester support card. 1 cost event, neutral, challenges action. Until the end of the phase, each Maester you control gains a military icon. Maybe playable in Conclave, yeah, not much else to say. I'm not sure if it's even going to be worth it in Conclave, but if you ever play it, that's where you play it. I mean, maybe give it a try in that deck. Got Meadowlark. This is a non-loyal Martell warship. Reaction, after you reveal a plot card, place 1 journey token on Meadowlark, little 1-cost warship. And then action, sacrifice Meadowlark to search your deck for a character with printed cost X or lower and put it into play. Shuffle your deck, of course, and X is the number of journey tokens on Meadowlark. So, I don't know. Maybe it's like you could play like one of these in a lot of Martell decks for sure. And it could go in other decks too. It's just a generally useful card. I think if you get 3 of the journey tokens on it, then it's a worthwhile investment. But it's not as good as long as Stark and Greyjoy are like the top 2 factions, because those are the 2 factions that easily blow up little non-limited locations like this. But if we pretend that that's not an issue, then I think it's very playable and could just be an easy one-of in like basically any Martell or Sun deck. Because Martell is like they're not a rush faction. It's likely that the game's going to be going on for 2 or 3 more turns after you marshal this thing to be able to sacrifice it and use the ability. And then if you draw it later in the game, then oh well, I guess it is kind of a dead card then, but you never know. I mean, if you're Martell and you're playing a 10-turn game, you're probably going to get value out of this. And also it's action, and you can just search and put the card straight into play, so you can use this in the middle of the challenges phase with like 3 tokens on it to bring out Aereo Hota or Dornish Spy or something. And then then it's definitely worthwhile. You're getting even more value out of it. So that could be a thing. We have Public Execution, 3 cost, Loyal Baratheon event. Will this finally be the playable 3-cost event that we've been waiting for? Marshalling action, choose and kill a kneeling character. So you use some effect that causes some big character of the opponent to kneel. Obviously there's a lot of ways to do that, and then you play this and they die. I think this is a meta-dependent card. I think it's good if there's a lot of big characters that can potentially be executed by it, then it's playable. I think if we're seeing a bunch of like Free Folk and Shadows decks, and honestly, Greyjoy as well, it's not good against Greyjoy because you're paying 3 for them to just use Arisen from the Sea. That's not going to be worth it. But if you put those aside and you're expecting to run into like, I don't know, Lannister and Tyrell and factions like that playing large characters that don't have, 0-cost saves that can be played from hand on reaction, then this could definitely be a worthwhile card. And it's a card that I imagine I'll give a try to at some point. You can obviously see the blowout potential for this. And I'm someone that likes to play the 7-cost Joffrey Baratheon, and he's considerably more expensive than this for a potentially similar effect, and often is still worth it. So I think this could be worth a shot. We have Sarella Sand, a new loyal Martell Sand Snake, and Bastard, of course, 4 cost, 3 strength, military intrigue. Reaction, after you lose a challenge in which Sarella is attacking, you may initiate an additional challenge of that type this phase, limit once per phase. I think this is a very decent one-of in a bunch of Martell decks, because you can imagine just doing like a chump military, and, they block it, and then, doing a military with this, and then they either block it and overcommit and let you attack again with some other character and then potentially win the military after all, or they just let you win it. So the ability could definitely be useful. You know, Martell, the attrition type of Martell, they want to win their intrigue challenges every turn, and this character definitely helps with winning intrigue challenges on offense. So I think she could go in those decks. Also, like Sand Snake decks, Bastard Viper decks, she can go in. So she has some uses for sure. Another interesting thing about her is she could even just go into like a crossing deck. You know, if you're ever a Mad Lad and you play Martell Crossing, her ability has some value there because you can attack with her and potentially get 3 challenges without having all 3 icons, or like without having to declare all 3 types of challenges. You know, you could declare something with her, lose it, declare another challenge of the same type, and then do like whatever, you know, one of the remaining 2 that you hadn't declared yet. That might be cool. We've got Shadow Black Assassin. Well, this is a burn card, so I don't like this card. Please no, but I think this is an automatic 3 of, probably. Yeah, in every burn deck, this is a 3 of. I guess if you're not playing burn, then it's not good, right? But it seems really good in burn. Loyal Targaryen character, ally, 3 cost, Shadow 2, military, and intrigue icons with 3 strengths. He has good stats, too, for what his effect is. And after he comes out of shadows, choose and kill a character with strength 1 or lower. So you can obviously imagine the uses for this card. It doesn't really need much explanation. I think he's going to be very nasty with the Dragon Pit. Shadow of the Isles. This is the Greyjoy Shadows event for the cycle. It's a Shadow-only event with Shadow 1. And action, each player chooses a non-limited location he or she controls and discards it from play. If there's a War Plot card revealed, return Shadow of the Isles to your hand. So maybe if you play Greyjoy Assault from the Shadows, because then your faction card Neil is reducing it to a 1 cost event instead of a 3 cost. As a 3 cost event, I have a really hard time imagining this is ever playable. If it was in a faction that had no location control, it would be a lot more viable, because then you'd be like, you know, well, this is literally the only way I have to potentially deal with annoying locations. But Greyjoy has numerous ways to discard locations that are way better than this. I mean, just compare it to Newly Made Lord. Newly Made Lord is 1 more gold and can be reduced by like Iron Island's fishmongers and stuff. It comes with a 4 strength power icon body attached to it. You don't have to discard your own location. Shadow of the Isles, you do have to discard one of your own locations. And you can target which location the opponent discards, as opposed to this letting them choose. It's just so much better, it's not even funny. So I really don't expect this to ever see any play. We have the Maiden Vault, which is a, Tyrell 2-cost location with Shadow 1. Reaction after the Maiden Vault comes out of shadows, choose a participating lady character, stand it and remove it from the challenge, and interrupts when the challenge's phase ends, kneel the Maiden Vault to return it to shadows. So the ability is a little bit questionable, because you can't really use it on opponents' characters. I mean, you can potentially use it if they just happen to be playing ladies, but that's not really consistent enough. You really would be using it on your own lady characters to fake people out. So you could declare a challenge and make them commit to defend it, then bring this out, you remove your lady from the challenge, and then she does another challenge. And I guess that's okay. I don't think it would really be worth it on its own. I think it will be used in shadow-heavy decks just to trigger... What is that damn card called? You guys know the one I'm talking about. The one that lets you like search the top 3 cards of your deck and put one in your hand. Old Town Undercity, yeah. So like Kingdom of Shadows, you could put it in just to like repeatedly trigger Old Town Undercity. That might be a use for it. Could also use it in like Lannister Banner of the Rose Shadows deck. And Lannister does have some ladies to actually use the effects with. Plus you could bring in some ladies from Tyrell in that banner deck and use it with Bowels of Casterly Rock and get some like repeatable Bowels of Casterly Rock triggers. It might be playable in those decks. We have a Stark Tower of the Hand, a new version for Stark. 1 cost, non-loyal. Reaction after a card you control comes out of shadows. If there is a Winter Plot card revealed, choose and stand a Stark character. So a Shadows plus Winter card. If you're playing Shadows and you're playing Winter Plots, then maybe this is usable. I do think you could potentially do like a Kingdom of Shadows Winter Plots deck out of Stark, maybe? I mean, then you can have like the Northern Keeps and whatever other winter cards there are. I don't know if there are actually any others that are any good. But maybe this is playable in that deck. I don't know. It's probably the Winter plot card thing is probably just going to be too limiting, though. I mean, let's be honest. Winter plot cards, they just don't really do it. Maybe if you ever end up doing Stark Kings of Winter, I don't know what Shadows cards would really go in there, because the problem is, like, if you're not playing a specific Shadows agenda, or maybe like a banner agenda that lets you bring in some Shadows cards from another faction, then it's going to be hard to have enough Shadows cards to justify this. It's like you have to have a bunch of Shadows and you have to do the Winter plot cards thing. If it was only one of those two requirements, that would make it a lot easier to use, but making both of them work, I think, is going to be pretty awkward. Then we've got the White Harbor Watchman, a House Manderley Guard. This is a Stark dude, 3 cost, military icon, 3 strength. After a character comes out of Shadows, sacrifice White Harbor Watchman to kill that character. Yeah, very good card if you expect to see any reasonable amount of Shadows cards at all. It's not that good, again, as well, while Free Folk and Greyjoy are what you're likely to run into, but it's sort of a meta call. If you think there's going to be Shadows and you're playing Stark, I would play this dude 100%. I mean, just sacrifice him into the flea bottom pile and like kill their Mirror Read or whatever obnoxious Shadows card it is. Seems pretty good. And you get a free sacrifice trigger as well. I mean, it's not one that you can control when it goes off, but it could still potentially be relevant, the ability to just sacrifice in like that. And then we've got the Tunnels of the Red Keep. This is a Lannister Shadow location, loyal location. Another 3-cost Shadow location, so sort of like Bowels. Although I think Bowels at Casterly Rock doesn't actually have Shadow. You have to marshal that one normally. But regardless, it's another one. Tunnels of the Red Keep, Shadow 2. Action, kneel Tunnels of the Red Keep to return it to Shadows. Then until the end of the phase, each character you control gets +1 strength for each card you control in Shadows. And max 1 per phase, so you cannot just bring it out of Shadows 15 times on a trade route's turn or something. Which would probably not be that good anyways, to be honest. You're probably not going to need to use this more than once to push through challenges that you want to win. So it's a card for Shadows decks, and it does combo with Bowels of Casterly Rock, because you can just bring it out in random phases and get it ready for the next turn. I think, yeah, it's max 1 per phase, so if you have like a lot of spare gold, you can actually just bring this out in like Dominance phase, and then bring it out again in Standing phase, and trigger Bowels to like draw more cards that way. I don't know if that would really be that good, but you could. I think it's worth giving a try in Lannister's Shadows decks. And Lannister is already pretty damn Shadows heavy at this point, so I'm going to be giving it a shot for sure. So that is the whole pack. I managed to go through them all. Pretty solid pack. I don't like the Kingdom of Shadows agenda, again. Just don't like the design on it. But if we put that aside, I like basically every card in the pack. None of them seem too stupid. Well, Shadow Black Assassin is stupid. I don't like this card, but I just don't like any burn cards, no matter what they are, so that's really my personal bias speaking. And the rest of the cards look pretty solid. So, yeah. Oh, I kept this one a lot shorter, only 23 minutes. I'm getting fast.